The town was small, quiet, and covered in dust. The kind of place where nothing new ever happened, where people worked, went home, and repeated the same life every day. Yet on this day, something different stood in the middle of the street. Something that made everyone nervous. Beneath a glowing old sign that said, "Help Wanted," an alien woman stood waiting. Her silver eyes shining like mirrors under the setting sun, her skin pale and faintly glowing as if light lived inside her, and her long cloak touched the ground unmoving, as if the wind itself dared not disturb her. From morning till evening she had not moved far, she just stood there, watching the humans who passed her by. Every man, woman, and child in the town could see her, but no one dared to stop. They walked faster, whispered to each other, and avoided her gaze. Mothers pulled their children closer. Workers crossed the street to avoid her, and the whole day people asked the same questions. Why was she here? What did she want? Why beneath that sign? And what kind of help could a creature like her even ask for? Rumors spread like fire in dry grass. In the cafe, someone whispered that she was a spy from another world. In the workshop, an old man claimed she was bait for an invasion. And outside the market, two boys swore they saw her eyes glow red when they walked too close. But nobody had proof. Nobody wanted to get close enough to find out. Still she stood there, not moving, not leaving. Her strange beauty and her silence pulling everyone's attention even when they tried to look away. The sun began to sink lower. The shadows grew longer and the alien woman remained. Her hands folded in front of her face calm, but her eyes full of something strange. Not anger, not pride, but maybe waiting. Like someone expecting a promise to be kept, yet no one came. No one spoke to her, and people began to think she would stand there until the stars came out. Glowing like one of them, then, near evening, a young man named Daniel walked down the road. He was not rich, not powerful, just an ordinary man tired from work, carrying tools in a bag, his clothes dusty, his hair messy from the day's labor. He noticed the crowd still whispering, pointing, avoiding the glowing woman, and unlike the others, he did not cross the street. He slowed down, stared at her, and wondered why no one dared to ask her anything. To him, she did not look like a monster, she looked lost, like someone who needed help. The alien woman lifted her head when Daniel's eyes met hers, and for the first time that day she moved, her lips parted, and in a soft, broken voice she spoke, the words heavy, slow, but clear enough to be understood. "Take me home," the crowd gasped. Some ran. Others muttered that the boy was cursed. But Daniel did not run. He stood frozen, his heart racing, his mind torn between fear and pity. He could see in her eyes not hatred, but desperation. Not a hunter, but someone hunted. Daniel asked her quietly, his voice trembling, "Who are you? What do you want?" And she only repeated the same words, slower this time. "Take me home," as if those were the only words she could manage, her body trembling for the first time, her silver eyes softer, almost human in their sadness. Daniel looked around. The crowd was watching, judging, whispering, but none of them dared to step closer. None of them dared to answer her plea, and he realized if he walked away, she would remain there until night swallowed her. The sky turned orange. The glowing sign buzzed weakly, and Daniel made a choice that others would call foolish. He stepped forward, his boots crunching on the dirt. He reached out his hand toward her and said, "All right, come with me." The crowd gasped again. Some shouted warnings. "Don't take her! She's dangerous. You'll bring doom to your house," but Daniel ignored them. He saw only the woman, and she slowly lifted her hand, cold and light as air, placing it into his. The alien woman's touch made the sign flicker brighter. Sparks danced in the air, and for a moment it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling both fear and responsibility. But he did not let go. He gently pulled her away from the sign, and she followed him without resistance, like a shadow finally given a guide. The people of the town stood still, silent, watching as the young man led the strange woman down the road, whispering that he would regret it, whispering that he had just invited danger into his life. Yet as Daniel walked, he felt something different. Deep inside, he felt he had just crossed a line between ordinary life and something greater, something dangerous but also extraordinary. The alien woman walked beside him, silent now, her eyes watching every light, every movement, as if memorizing the human world with each step. And though Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, he knew he could not leave her, not now, not after those words, not after she had asked him for a home behind them. The help wanted sign buzzed one last time, then flickered out into darkness, leaving the street in silence, and the whispers of the town would continue long into the night. But Daniel had already taken the first step into a story far larger than himself, a story that began with fear and would grow into something no one in that town could ever imagine. Daniel pushed open the creaky wooden door of his small house. The alien woman followed behind him, her steps slow, careful as if each movement was a test. The old house smelled of dust and wood smoke. The floor groaned under her weight, and the dim yellow light of a single bulb made her silver eyes glow even brighter. Daniel placed his tool bag on the table, his hands shaking slightly because the truth was simple. He had no idea what he had just done. He had taken a stranger, not only a stranger but something not even human, into his home. The alien woman stood in the center of the room, silent, her gaze moving from one thing to another. She looked at the chairs, the clock on the wall, the small stove, as if each object was a puzzle piece she was trying to understand. She tilted her head when she saw the old radio, its static humming faintly. She even leaned close to the window and touched the glass, her long pale fingers tracing its surface as if the idea of a window was new to her. Daniel watched her nervously, his mouth dry, unsure if he should speak, but silence pressed heavier with each passing second. Finally he said in a voice that tried to be steady, "You can sit down." He pulled a chair, motioning for her to sit, but she only stared at it for a long moment before slowly lowering herself, her posture stiff, awkward, as if she had never used a chair before. Daniel realized this woman, whoever she was, had never lived like a human. She was trying to copy, trying to blend, but her every move revealed that she was from somewhere far different. The house was quiet except for the sound of her breathing, soft and strange, almost musical. Daniel wanted to ask her name, where she came from, why she had chosen him, but he remembered the way she had spoken earlier, broken, simple, almost like a child learning her first words. So he started small, pointing at himself. He said, "Daniel." Tapping his chest, she stared for a moment, then touched her own chest and whispered, "Seer." The word slipped out like a breath, like a secret, and Daniel felt a chill, because the name sounded both beautiful and haunting at the same time. He repeated it softly, "Seer," and she nodded once, her silver eyes glowing with a strange light. For a moment they simply looked at each other, the silence stretching long, heavy with questions neither could answer. Then Seer looked toward the stove, where a kettle rested, and she tilted her head again. Daniel followed her gaze, realizing she was curious about everything. So he struck a match, lit the small burner, and the flame sprang to life. Seer flinched slightly, then leaned closer, fascinated, her hand hovering near the fire but not touching it, the light reflecting in her eyes as the water boiled. Daniel poured it into 2 cups, offering one to her. She held it carefully, sniffing it first, then touching it with her lips, her face unreadable, and finally she nodded, whispering "warm," the first new word she spoke on her own. Daniel almost smiled, but the strangeness of the moment kept him still. This alien, this seer, was learning his world one object at a time. Yet he wondered, what hidden power did she carry? What danger followed her? And why did she look at everything with both awe and fear outside? Whispers had already begun to spread. The neighbors had seen him take her in, and they gathered in small groups pointing at his house, muttering that he had lost his mind, that he had invited a curse. Some wanted to call the authorities. Others wanted to watch and see what would happen. The quiet town was no longer quiet. It was boiling with rumor, and Daniel could feel their eyes even through the walls. But when he looked at Seer, sitting there with the steaming cup in her delicate hands, he felt something shift inside him, a sense that she was more lost than dangerous. Night deepened, the wind rattled the windows, and Daniel finally asked her softly, "Why me? Why did you wait under that sign?" Seer looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim room, and she answered slowly, "You, not fear." Her words broken but clear enough. Daniel felt a chill again because it was true, he had not run. He had stepped forward when no one else had dared, and now he wondered if that single step had bound him to something far greater than he could understand. Strange things began to happen in the house as the night grew darker. The radio flickered between channels by itself. Lights buzzed and dimmed when Seer moved. The clock on the wall ticked faster for a moment, then slowed again. Daniel noticed but said nothing, watching her carefully. Was it her presence, her power, or something chasing her? He could not tell. Seer looked at these things without surprise, almost as if she expected them, and Daniel realized her being here would change everything he thought he knew about the world. Before sleep, Daniel brought her a blanket. Showing her how to use it, she wrapped it clumsily, lying down on the couch, her eyes still open, still glowing faintly, as if she never fully rested. Daniel lay in his small bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the strange hum that seemed to fill the air whenever Seer breathed. His thoughts restless, part of him afraid, part of him drawn to her mystery. And in that quiet night, as the town whispered outside and the wind howled against the windows, Daniel understood one thing clearly. His life was no longer his own. It was now tied to Seer, and whatever she brought with her from the stars. The next morning came with a pale gray sky, clouds hanging low as if the heavens themselves were watching. Daniel woke to the sound of silence, a silence that felt heavy and alive. He turned his head and saw Seer sitting on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket, her silver eyes open and glowing softly in the dim light. She had not moved much through the night. Maybe she had not slept at all. She looked more like a sentinel than a guest, her gaze fixed on the small table where Daniel's old toolbox rested. Daniel rubbed his eyes and rose, still unsure if everything that had happened was real. But the moment he saw her, the truth became clear. She was here. She was real, and his life had already changed. He made coffee, poured it into a cup, and placed it on the table near her. Seer watched the steam rising, then looked at him, her lips parting slightly. She whispered one word, "Thanks," her voice still broken. But this time there was a little more strength in it. Daniel nodded, though his mind was filled with too many questions to stay calm. He sat across from her, staring, finally pushing the words out. "Seer, I need to know, who are you? Why did you wait under that sign? What are you running from?" The air felt tense, the ticking of the wall clock grew louder. Seer lowered her head, her fingers tightening around the cup. For a long time she said nothing. Daniel thought she would refuse, but then her voice came soft, slow, heavy with meaning. Not soldier. They want war. I refuse. So they hunt me." Daniel leaned closer, his heart pounding. "War. What war?" Seer lifted her eyes, the glow brighter now, and she said, "My people, strong, cold, they see humans. Weak, soft, easy to break, they plan. Invasion, they plan to rule." Her words cracked, her breathing quick, and Daniel felt chills race down his arms. The rumors were true. Aliens were coming. But this woman, this Seer, was not with them. She was against them. She reached into the folds of her cloak and pulled out a strange object, a crystal device no larger than Daniel's fist. Its surface pulsed with faint blue light. Symbols moved across it like liquid, changing shapes that Daniel could not read. The moment it touched the table, the lights in the house flickered. The clock ticked irregularly, and the radio buzzed with static. Seer whispered, "This key, this shows them where I am, but also it can stop them if human is brave enough." Daniel stared at the crystal. His breath stuck in his chest. It looked alive, it looked dangerous, and yet it was the only thing tying her to her story. He asked slowly, "Why show me this? Why not destroy it?" Seer's voice grew sharp. "Destroy? No, they will come anyway. This is proof, this is shield, but only with human, not with me. They know me. They fear me, but they hate me more. If I keep it, I die. If human keeps it, they hesitate." The words sank deep into Daniel's heart. He could not believe it. A simple man from a dusty town, holding something that could decide the fate of Earth. His hands trembled as he reached for the crystal. The surface was warm, almost beating like a heart, and when he touched it, images flashed in his mind. Vast ships blotting out stars, burning cities, people running, but also something else. Humans standing together, fighting back, refusing to kneel. Daniel gasped and pulled his hand back, sweat on his forehead. His heart racing like a drum. Seer watched him closely, her expression unreadable but her eyes softer than before. "Now, you see," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly, his mind filled with fear and awe. "Yes, I see, but why me? Why trust me?" Seer lowered her gaze, her voice almost breaking. "Because you, not run, all others run. You stay, you reach hand, you different, and different is hope." Outside, the town was waking, but inside the house the air was heavy with secrets. Daniel leaned back, staring at the crystal glowing faintly between them. He wanted to believe her, but questions still burned. "Seer, if they are coming, if they are so strong, what chance do we even have?" Seer's lips trembled, and for the first time her voice carried something like sorrow. "Chance. Small, but humans. Fight with heart, my people. Never understand, that is why I chose you. That is why I left them." Her words felt heavy. Like a weight on Daniel's chest, he wanted to ask more. But a sudden noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps, whispers, voices near the window. Neighbors curious, maybe suspicious, maybe already planning to call the authorities. Daniel pulled the curtain slightly and saw shadows moving, people pointing at his house. Their eyes wide with fear, Seer noticed too. Her silver eyes narrowing, her body tense. She whispered, "They know." Soon others come, not humans mine. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. The truth was no longer far away. It was here in his home, in his hands, and though he was only a simple man, he understood that the choice he had made last night had tied him to something vast, something dangerous, something unstoppable. He looked back at Seer, who was now standing, her cloak flowing like smoke, the crystal glowing brighter on the table, and he realized that keeping her here was no longer just kindness. It was a promise, and that promise would test him more than anything he had ever faced. The clock struck, the kettle whistled, and the world outside continued as if nothing had changed. But inside that small house, two beings sat across from each other, one human, one alien, bound by trust, bound by fear, and bound by the heavy secret of an approaching storm. Days passed slowly, yet every hour felt heavy with secrets. Daniel tried to live as if life was normal, working in the mornings, fixing tools, talking briefly with the neighbors, but inside his house nothing was normal anymore. Seer was there, silent most of the time, watching everything, learning, copying, and trying to understand what it meant to live like a human. Her silver eyes scanned every object. Her voice grew a little stronger each day, and yet Daniel could feel the tension inside her. Like a storm that never left her chest, she had begun to eat human food. Though awkwardly, she studied the way Daniel held a spoon, the way he drank from a glass, and slowly she followed. Her movements clumsy at first, but more natural each day. She even laughed once, a short, sharp sound. When Daniel accidentally spilled tea across the table, the laugh surprised him, soft and almost musical, and for a moment he forgot she was not human at all. But then the lights flickered again, the air hummed faintly, and the reminder came back she was different. She carried something far beyond this small town. At night, Daniel would sit across from her, asking questions in his simple way, and Seer would answer in broken phrases, little pieces of truth falling out like puzzle parts. She told him of stars that burned brighter than the sun, of ships the size of mountains that moved like shadows, of her people who lived without fear, without kindness, only with power and order. She spoke of her refusal, how she could not fight against humans, how she could not watch another world fall under their cold control. Her words were halting, but Daniel could see the pain in her eyes each time she remembered. The bond between them grew quietly. Daniel began to feel protective of her, not because she was weak, but because he sensed the weight she carried. She had left her own kind, betrayed them for something she believed was right, and now she sat in his house, hunted, unwanted, yet holding on. Sometimes when she spoke of the coming invasion, her voice would tremble, not with fear for herself, but with fear for the humans who had no idea what was approaching. Daniel would listen, his heart torn because part of him still struggled to believe, but another part of him already knew her words were true. Strange signs began to appear around the town, small things that only Seer seemed to notice at first, shadows in the night sky that disappeared too quickly, faint humming that did not come from any machine, a sudden chill in the air even when the day was warm. Seer's silver eyes would follow these things, her body tensing like a hunted animal, and Daniel began to see them too. Once he woke in the middle of the night to find her standing at the window, her cloak wrapped tightly, whispering words in her own language, a song or a prayer he could not tell, but her voice was filled with sorrow. The neighbors grew restless, whispers spread further. Some claimed strange lights had been seen over the hills, others swore they heard metallic echoes in the sky, though no one could explain them. People began to avoid Daniel openly now, some even crossing the street when he passed. He could feel their suspicion, their fear, and it pressed heavy on him. Yet every time he returned home and saw Seer sitting quietly, her silver eyes soft when they met his, he felt that walking away was impossible. She was part of his life now. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Daniel found Seer sitting outside on the old wooden step, her eyes fixed on the fading sky. He sat beside her, the silence between them gentle but heavy. After a while, she whispered, "They near." Daniel turned to her sharply. "You mean your people?" She nodded slowly, her voice a low tremor. "Yes, hunters. They search, they feel me, they smell me, they never stop." Her words made the air colder. Daniel clenched his fists, anger sparking inside him. "Then we need to leave, go far away, maybe hide." But Seer shook her head. her voice steady. No, hiding never works, they always find. Always. Daniel's chest tightened. He hated the fear in her eyes, the way her voice carried weight. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, surprising himself, and whispered, "You are not alone anymore." "Not while I'm here." Seer turned to him, her expression unreadable for a moment, but then softer. As if the words had touched something inside her, she whispered back, "You. Brave, too brave. It will hurt you." Daniel shook his head. "Maybe, but I'd rather fight with you than live afraid without you." That night, as Seer rested on the couch, Daniel lay awake, his mind racing. He thought of his small life, his quiet days before her arrival, and he realized he no longer wanted that life. He wanted answers. He wanted to stand against whatever was coming. He wanted to prove that humans were not weak, that humans had something her people did not understand, courage born from fear, strength born from love. He did not know if he could protect her, but he knew he would try. Near midnight, a sound echoed faintly in the distance, a low hum like thunder but steady. Daniel sat up quickly, his heart pounding. Seer's eyes opened instantly, glowing bright in the dark. She whispered only 2 words, "They come." And Daniel felt his blood run cold. The bond between them had grown strong, but now it would be tested, for the hunters she feared were no longer shadows in her memory. They were real, they were near, and they were coming straight for her. The town slept in uneasy silence. Shadows stretched long across empty streets, but above the quiet rooftops something unnatural moved. Black shapes drifted in the night sky, silent without flame or smoke. Their surfaces swallowed light like deep water. And though no alarm rang, though no bell was struck, Seer knew. Her silver eyes snapped open, her body tense like a wire, her voice cutting through the dark. "They are here!" Daniel jumped from his bed, his heart pounding. He rushed to the window and saw nothing at first, only clouds drifting under the moon. But then his eyes caught it. A shimmer, a ripple across the sky, like glass bending, and within it dark vessels glided, hunting machines from a world far beyond. His breath caught, fear flooding him, yet beside him Seer stood calm, her face pale, her eyes locked on the sky. "Hunters," she whispered. "They come for me." The house trembled faintly as a low hum rolled through the air. Neighbors stirred, dogs barked, and lights flickered across the town. Shadows of people moved behind curtains. Whispers filled the street, but no one dared step outside. Daniel grabbed Seer's arm, his voice sharp. "We have to leave. Now," but Seer shook her head slowly. "No use, they see me always, they feel my trace, no hiding." Only facing, Daniel's chest tightened. Fear battled with anger. He had never faced soldiers, never faced war, but the thought of giving her up tore him apart. He asked harshly, "Then what do we do? Stand here and wait for them to kill us?" Seer turned to him, her silver eyes glowing brighter, and for the first time her voice carried fire. "No, we fight, but not with strength, with heart. They do not understand heart." A beam of light cut the clouds above, silent but sharp as a blade. Scanning the rooftops, sweeping across the town, it lingered when it touched Daniel's street, and the hum grew louder, closer, windows rattled, dishes shook, and then shadows descended. Tall figures stepping down from the dark sky, their armor black, their faces hidden by smooth masks that reflected nothing. They moved without sound, without hesitation, their presence colder than winter. The hunters had arrived. Daniel's neighbors screamed quietly behind closed doors. Some prayed. Some called his name, begging him to throw the alien woman out, to save himself, but Daniel stood firm. His fist clenched, his heart thundering. Seer stood beside him, her cloak stirring as if touched by invisible wind. She whispered, "Stay close. They will try to break you." Daniel nodded, fear burning in his veins, yet something stronger pushing him forward. The hunters reached his door without knocking, their steps heavy, the wooden boards groaning under their weight. The door shivered as they pushed it open, and suddenly the small home was filled with cold shadows. 3 of them stood tall, their armor humming faintly, their voices low and mechanical. One spoke, "Return the traitor, human." "And you live?" Daniel's throat dried, but he forced his voice out steady. "She stays here." The hunters tilted their heads in unison, the movement eerie, like predators studying prey. One raised a device glowing faintly. Scanning Seer, the walls buzzed with static. Lights blinked out and the air grew heavy. Daniel felt his knees weaken. But Seer stood tall, her voice clear. "You cannot take me. I will not fight your war." The hunter's voice turned sharper, colder. "Then the human dies first." Something in Daniel snapped. Fear turned to fury. He grabbed the nearest object, a heavy wrench from his table, and swung it with all his strength. The metal clashed against the hunter's armor. Sparks flew. The creature staggered back a step, not destroyed but surprised. Daniel gasped at his own boldness, and in that moment he realized they could bleed, they could stumble. They were not untouchable gods. They were only hunters in armor. The other two lunged forward, but Seer raised her hand, the crystal device flashing bright. A pulse of blue light filled the room. The hunters froze for a split second, their armor buzzing, their steps faltering. Daniel dragged her back toward the door, his heart hammering. "We can't stay here." "They'll burn the whole house," Seer nodded, her face tight with fear and resolve. "Then we run, but not far. We stand where humans see, they must see hunters. They must believe." They burst out into the night, the street filled with terrified neighbors peering through windows, some shouting warnings, some begging Daniel to give her up. But when they saw the hunters emerge from his home, tall and dark, their armor gleaming under the broken moonlight, gasps spread through the town. Fear turned to anger, whispers to shouts. "They are real. The stories were true. They came for us." The hunters moved forward, their weapons glowing faintly. But something new filled the air. Human voices, human courage. People stepped out of their homes with tools, sticks, even old rifles. They stood behind Daniel, shaking but present. Daniel's heart surged. He shouted, "We don't run. Not tonight." And Seer looked at him with eyes wide. Almost astonished, she whispered, "This is what they do not understand. Humans together." The hunters paused, their cold calculation meeting something unexpected. A crowd united by fear but also by defiance. The night trembled with the sound of human voices rising, and for the first time Daniel saw hesitation in the movements of the hunters. A tiny crack in their perfect control, and he knew the fight was only beginning. The hunters stood tall in the dusty street, their black armor gleaming under the pale moon, their masks smooth and cold, their weapons glowing faintly with a light that promised death. They expected silence, surrender, fear. But what they saw was something else. Daniel standing in front of Seer with a wrench in his hand, his neighbors behind him with old rifles. Kitchen knives, farming tools, even wooden sticks. The humans were trembling, yes, but they did not step back. They stepped closer, forming a wall of fragile flesh against towering shadows. Seer's silver eyes widened. She whispered, "They do not understand this. They do not understand why you stand when death is certain." Daniel's grip tightened on the wrench, his voice rising, raw and full of fire. "Because this is our home, and no one takes it without a fight." The hunters tilted their heads, their voices low and metallic. "Weak creatures, your courage is waste. You will break, all of you." One raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a stone flew through the air. Striking his mask with a crack, a boy from the crowd had thrown it, his small hand trembling, yet his face fierce. The hunter staggered for only a second, but that second mattered because the humans roared, their fear turning into fire, and they charged forward together. Daniel swung his wrench again, striking hard against the hunter's leg joint. Sparks flew, the armor dented, and the creature stumbled. Others followed, an old man struck with a shovel. A woman slammed a lantern that shattered and spilled fire across black armor. The hunters were strong, yes, but they were not prepared for this, not prepared for a town of ordinary humans fighting as one. Seer raised the crystal, its blue light pulsing brighter with each heartbeat. She shouted in her broken voice, "Now fight!" Together, the device released waves of energy, making the hunters' armor shudder, their weapons flicker. Daniel could see confusion in their movements, as if the very strength they trusted was betraying them. He shouted louder, "Don't stop, hit them harder." The street exploded with chaos, humans striking with anything they had, the hunters pushing back with brute force, knocking people aside, but each time one fell, another stood in their place. Blood was drawn, cries filled the night. But still they did not run. Even when the hunters raised their weapons, the humans did not scatter. They moved closer, holding each other, protecting each other, refusing to give ground. Daniel's chest burned with fear and pride. He fought with everything inside him, swinging the wrench again and again, his body aching, his arms heavy, but his spirit unbroken. Seer stood close behind him, her cloak whipping in the air, her silver eyes blazing. She shouted words in her own language, and the crystal responded, sending a shockwave that knocked one hunter to his knees. The crowd roared. They piled on him, striking, stabbing, pulling at the armor until sparks burst and the machine inside cracked. The hunters realized something was wrong. This was not the easy hunt they expected. This was not a planet of weaklings. This was something their leaders had never taught them. Humans who would bleed together, suffer together, and fight together with a fire that could not be measured. One hunter hissed, "Illogical, wasteful." "Yet they do not stop," another answered. "They should be broken." "But they rise again." Their voices faltered, the certainty in them shaking. Daniel spat blood from his mouth, lifted his wrench once more and shouted so the whole town could hear, "We are not weak, we are human, and we fight for each other." The words cut through the night. Stronger than any weapon, stronger than the hum of alien machines. Seer looked at him with awe, her voice trembling. This is why I left them, this is what they fear." The hunters pressed forward again, but their rhythm was broken, their unity cracking against the messy, wild, unstoppable tide of human courage. One by one, the townsfolk found their courage in Daniel's defiance. An old woman with shaking hands fired her rifle and struck true. A young man leapt onto a hunter's back with nothing but a hammer. Children screamed from doorways but did not hide their eyes. They watched their parents stand tall. They watched their people refuse to bow. The crystal pulsed faster now, each wave stronger, feeding on the unity in the street. Seer's voice rose. "They cannot hold, they cannot last. Together you make them weak." Daniel's eyes burned with sweat and dust, his body ready to collapse, but his spirit rising higher. He raised the wrench again, struck hard, and felt the armor crack open under his blow. The hunter staggered back, sparks bursting, its mask breaking into shards. Silence followed for only a heartbeat, but in that silence everyone saw it. The proof. The hunters were not gods. They could bleed, they could fall, and that was enough. The humans roared louder than ever, pushing forward, their fear gone. Their courage burning, the hunters stepped back, their movement slower, uncertain. For the first time in their mission they hesitated, and hesitation was deadly. Daniel leaned against Seer, gasping for breath yet smiling through blood. "We can win," he whispered, and Seer nodded, her silver eyes shining like stars. "Yes, because you are human, and nothing fights like human heart." The street was a battlefield, smoke and sparks rising into the night sky. The hunters staggered under the weight of human defiance, their black armor cracked, their weapons sputtering with fading light. Yet they did not stop. They pressed forward again, relentless, their cold voices echoing, "Surrender or perish, surrender, or perish." But the humans only shouted louder, their voices raw, their hands bleeding, their courage unshaken. And in the center of it all stood Daniel and Seer, side by side, two figures bound not by blood, but by trust. Daniel's arms ached, his wrench heavy as iron, yet he refused to lower it. He looked at Seer, who clutched the glowing crystal, its blue light brighter than ever. Pulsing like a heart ready to burst, she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and strength. "It is time. They will not stop unless I give myself." Daniel's heart froze. He shook his head violently, his voice sharp. "No, you can't. If you go with them, you'll die." "You said it yourself." Seer's silver eyes softened, sorrow shimmering within. "Better I die than all of you." The words cut into him deeper than any blade. Daniel felt rage rise, hot and heavy. He stepped closer, gripping her shoulders, his voice breaking. "No, you don't understand. You're not alone anymore. You're one of us now. And humans don't throw away the people they fight for." Seer blinked, her lips parting as if the idea was strange, alien. Yet her eyes glistened with something she had not felt before, hope. The hunters raised their weapons again, beams of light sparking to life, aiming for the crowd. And panic spread, children screamed. Mothers shielded them, men braced with their tools. But Daniel did not move away. He stepped forward, placing himself between the hunters and everyone else, his chest heaving, his voice booming across the street. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me. Through all of us. We will not kneel, we will not break." The crystal in Seer's hands trembled, its glow expanding, reacting to Daniel's words, to his defiance, to his heart. She gasped as symbols raced across its surface. Faster and faster, the air shook, the ground hummed, and the hunters froze, their scanners flashing red, their voices mechanical and sharp. "Impossible, impossible. The device responds to human. The device obeys the human." Daniel felt the warmth spread through him, the crystal now pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He turned his gaze on the hunters, and for the first time he did not feel small. He did not feel weak. He felt unbreakable. Seer whispered, awe in her trembling voice, "It chooses you. Daniel, your courage, your heart, it makes you its shield." The hunters stepped back, their perfect control faltering. They had expected easy prey, but they had awakened something they could not predict. Daniel lifted the crystal high, its light exploding outward in a wave that shook the very air. The hunters stumbled, their armor sparking, their weapons shattering. One dropped to its knees, then another, their cold voices breaking. Retreat, retreat, target compromised. Retreat. And in the next moment they vanished, their forms dissolving into shadows that melted back into the sky. The street fell silent, broken only by the ragged breathing of the townsfolk, smoke rising, embers glowing, and the faint hum of the crystal fading into quiet. Daniel lowered his arm, trembling, his body weak, but his spirit burning stronger than ever. Seer moved to him, placing her hand gently on his chest, her silver eyes soft. "You saved them." "You saved me." Daniel shook his head, gasping. "No, we saved each other." The crowd slowly gathered around, their faces filled with awe, with fear, with respect. Men and women who had once whispered that Daniel was a fool now looked at him like a leader. Children clutched their parents, whispering his name, and in their eyes Daniel saw something more than gratitude. He saw belief. Belief that humans could stand against the stars themselves. Seer wrapped her cloak tighter, her gaze on the dark sky, her voice quiet. "They will return. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but they will not stop. Yet now they know humans fight. They know humans are not easy prey." Daniel nodded, his grip tightening around the crystal. "Then let them come, we'll be ready, not just me. Not just this town, but all of us, everywhere. They'll learn that humans don't give up, no matter how strong the enemy is." Seer smiled faintly, the first true smile since she had arrived beneath that glowing sign, her voice soft, almost tender. "That is why I chose you. That is why I chose this world, because in the heart of human weakness, there is strength my people will never understand." As dawn rose, painting the sky with gold and red, the people began to rebuild, cleaning the broken glass, tending to the wounded, their fear slowly turning into determination. Daniel stood at the edge of the street with Seer beside him, the crystal glowing faintly in his hand, no longer just a strange object but a symbol, a promise, a legacy. The day would come when the hunters returned, but when they did, they would face not one man, not one town, but a world united by the fire of its people. And so the story that began with a lonely alien beneath a help wanted sign ended with a human and an alien standing side by side, not as strangers, but as allies, not as prey and hunter, but as hope and shield. And though the road ahead was filled with danger, one truth was clear: humanity was not weak. Humanity was not helpless. Humanity was ready, and nothing in the stars could ever change that.